be doctors, nurses, midwives in our own homes. I will begin by giving an initial preamble that last year we held a stepping stone boot camp for students who were aged between 9 to 19 years. And when we were discussing, I sat and asked myself, when do students last see a doctor? I looked at my own children, and that the last time they talked to a doctor, apart from me as a mother, is when they were sick. That means the only interaction was when the child was sick and was just to chew what took her. If it was fever, they only talked about fever. So when do us, the health workers, when do we talk to this age that is very vulnerable, the age that is looking for information, the age that is trying to understand whom they are? They are exploring themselves. They are trying to understand themselves. But us who should give information, correct information, we keep hiding our heads in the sand. With the era of phones, the children are just asking, why am I having blood every month? If this comes, what should I do? And they are in your home. Now in the COVID era, my dear parents, the children have been with you and you have been expected to provide correct information. That's why I began by saying that we as parents, we should be doctors in our homes. During the sessions when I was discussing with the students from different schools, that was last year in December at the Uganda Museum, the students were bold enough. They said, Dr. Hanifa and the different people that came, you are telling us about our sexuality. You are talking to us about our reproductive health. But do you know that our parents are ignorant? I'll go and ask mom, my mom doesn't know. If it is a girl, when they would go to the father says, those female things, they are for your mother. You wait for your mother to come. But the child has got a problem right now. She needs information. That is the reason why we organized a session for parents. Initially, we had actually thought that this session would also be physical, but with the COVID, we agreed that let's start an e-session. And eventually, my dear parents, we shall have to create time and have a physical session. And we address some of these things when we are seeing ourselves better face to face. We parents should be at the forefront of mentorship. You are the role model. You should be a teacher. You should be a coach. Okay? You should be as knowledgeable as possible, and you should be able to have people who should give you information in case you don't know. Gone are the days when we would lie our children. Don't do this because you'll become short. Now the child just searches. So you should be able to provide information, moreover, correct information. If you don't know that information, then you have people like us who have come out to say that we need to have a stepping stone parents community. We have a WhatsApp group where parents ask all sorts of questions, and then you can be able to provide correct information to our children. You are going to be a health educator. You are going to be the primary health educator in your home. Now children are going back to school. You should be able, amongst other things on your to-do list, put health education. You are going to sit and talk to the children before they go back to school. The list of eats, the mandazis that are missing, the books, amongst your checklist, note this. You are #1 health educator, and your to-do list, please put health education. The theme for this session is parents' knowledge is a prerequisite to empowerment of adolescents and young people. The ultimate goal is that a knowledgeable parent is a stepping stone to a health, career-oriented child. Let me tell you, students are offering sciences. Students are gaining marks. If the marks do not meet a knowledgeable child, if the marks of the child is getting does not tally with skills, we have friends who were studying with, they were very knowledgeable, but they missed just a few life skills to enable them survive, the changing world. They were very knowledgeable, but unfortunately, their intellect, the classroom marks did not help them. That is why in this session, we are going to see few life skills that can help our students, our children, to be able to survive in this turning world. Today, as stepping stone, we are achieving one of our milestones. At Stepping Stone, we are health educators. We are coaches, we coach. We do mentorship, we give career guidance, we link health. If you don't stay healthy, you cannot achieve your career. We are role modeling. So all these should also be functions of a knowledgeable parent. Our principles is that as we go through the skills, of course, we teach children to be God-fearing. We teach children to love, but what type of love do children understand? These days, our children know better than us. The moment you talk about love, our children just understand the romantic relationship between a boy and a girl. When you talk about love, the children in secondary schools, right from senior one, even when you are on assembly, the head teachers who are here will testify. The moment you talk about love, they think you are talking about the romantic relationship. You as a parent should begin with a life skill of love. Love begins, love me as your parent. Love your sisters. By the time you talk about the other love and what they should do and they should not do, the children should know that the relationship between you and her or him is actually called love. Okay? When you are at assembly and you say, dear students, in the dormitory, please love each other. Every student will cheer, yes, they have told us to love each other. The only love they are thinking is the romantic love. But we know that there are different types of love. So as a parent, you should be able to empower your child with the skills that will help that child to protect his or her body. For example, I'll give some of the life skills. And before I go further on, I actually want to inform our parents that as we are on the forum right now, kindly share your WhatsApp number because we would like to share with you some of the materials that I'm using for presentation, the ones that you'll go back and read so that you can be able to health educate your child. I'll give an example of one of the life skills, negotiation. How many parents amongst us here have talked to their daughters, for example, about negotiation? We know that as children go back to school, even now when they are in holiday, one of the roles of the boys is to say, I love you. You know that they say it. You girl, you have big eyes. I like your big bums. I like the way you look. I like your eyes. Have you gotten time to tell your daughter that, Naila, as you go back to school, dear parents, I will request that we first turn off our videos because It looks like there is some interruption because many parents are putting on their videos. Please just turn off your videos. The life skill of negotiation. If a boy says you have big eyes, how does this child respond? The girl will start saying, Choka, you boy, you are saying I have good eyes. The boy looks at this as a vulnerable child. So the boy will advance other words. When someone says you have big bums, what does the child say? If the child meets herself or himself in a corner, does she have any negotiation skills? For example, if he's alone at home and a brother or a cousin or an uncle is trying to open the dress, what should the child do? Have you had time as a parent to show that even your uncle can be dangerous? To say that even your father, the fathers that are here, I'm sorry to say, but you've been reading newspapers. You've been seeing how fathers, the other day there was a whole report, how many fathers have actually sexually abused our children. How many fathers, it is on record that fathers have abused our children. Those skills are critical. Self-control skill, that is a life skill. Self-control means the child, even if you are in a situation, for example, if you are in the dormitory, if a boy gives you 5,000 and is advancing to write you letters and is giving you those 5,000, that 5,000, if you don't have money, can you have, I don't have this money, I should not give my body to 5,000. Making their bodies precious and appreciating themselves. Let me tell you, these days, one of the major problems that we have is that everything has been sexualized. Everything has been sexualized. You see the advert, it is all about sex. You see whatever. So how are you preparing the child? You say, you know what? Everything has a right time. You are teaching your child to have that skill, to know that actually time tells it all. Coping with stress. Students go through a lot of stress. Let me tell you, our children, before the VD, 2 days before VD, you'll see how students are all very miserable at school. That is stress at school. Just because they don't have it, they don't have money. Get time as a health educator and talk to your children about some of these skills. Goal setting, being assertive. My dear parents, assertiveness is one of the key skills that we should be talking to our children. The way, I mean, you said, gone are the days, I remember when I was growing up, our parents used to say, don't have eye contact. When you look to the elder, you are going to be a stubborn child. Ogenda kuba mulalu, But these days we are telling children that you should be assertive. Talk when you have eye contact. Talk to that person telling you that you have big eyes. Talk to them straight in the eyes so that they know you mean it. Don't look down. Don't bite your fingers. Don't face the other side. Don't do mannerisms of folding yourself. Stand straight and tell the person that now it is about my education. Those are some of the skills. Those are some of the communication messages. As a health educator, you are going to give your students, your children, before they go back to school. So, in one of your actions, you are going to be a health educator. Let's talk about growing up. Apart from physical body changes, we know that both boys and girls, they get those physical changes. But as a parent, are you aware that children get mood swings? Especially the girls. But it happens in both male and females, the boys and girls. We have seen, I have got several calls where parents are saying, "Bannange, nga this child omwana takyampulira, omwana agera ekiseera nanyiigira." The child sometimes is very annoyed with me. Sometimes is actually happy with me. What should I do with my child? Okay? What should I do with my child? Just as a parent that sometimes, for example, if a child is starting her period, she gets all those mood swings. Why? It is hormones. It is those natural chemicals in the body. You as a parent should be able to read, that this child is uncomfortable. If you have created a rapport, then you need, if you have created a rapport, then you need to call to this child, "Hanifa, are you okay? Do you have any pains?" Or the child may disclose that, "I'm starting my periods and I'm uncomfortable." Maybe the child just needs a rest because of abdominal cramps. Now, as mothers, you just say, "No, you don't have to be in bed." So that this is an age where sometimes children need their space. Space. They need some space. Give them a little space. That is your time. And it's okay. You can tell the child that, if you feel like you want to have your private time, you let me know that, "Mommy, between 7 and 8, I really want to rest because I want to think about myself, or I have some pains. I'm trying to catch up on something that is personal." Okay? So all that is actually in growing up. In growing up, one of the key messages that I would like to share with parents: start talking to your children as early as 7 years. Gone are the days where you're talking to children about sexuality. Growing up is a taboo. By age 7 years, the children have already started identifying that there is a difference between parts of a girl and parts of a boy. So start talking to them that, there is a difference. The children will start wondering, why does mommy sleep with dad? Why does mommy, do this? That is also the time for you parents to behave. What do you do before children? Do you just hug anyhow? To what extent do you hug or do whatever you are supposed to do? This is the time to talk to our children about bad and good touches. I'm sorry the video is off, but someone is working on it. Bad and good touches. The children are now going to go back to school, the children are going through, the tax packs. Even, the children will give them drivers, the uncles that have been staying at home, the neighbors. Now that children have been in COVID situations, they have created new friends. The new friends will want to kusibula, to say bye-bye. Can we talk to our children about bad touches? If someone shakes your hands, that may be okay, depending on your religion, because I know Muslims, they are not supposed to, to shake hands. But if someone touches your hand and then scratches inside, that means that is a bad touch. That means that is vulgar. Do you know children of these days don't know? Someone will continue touching and then they feel that sensation, because it is normal from the age of 10 for children to get the romantic associations in terms of their minds. Not the actual doing it, but what I mean is that it is normal to get attracted to the opposite sex. It is normal for them to start feeling that, maybe there is a certain love. I remember in our secondary, we used to call it electricity. That is why you should tell your child, when you are seated in school, in a mixed school, don't be too close to a boy. The boy will start getting closer and closer, and naturally there will be attraction. So what I was saying is that when the body touches, when someone touches your hands and starts scratching, when someone touches your breast, yes, you'll get that sensation, you'll get the electricity, but it doesn't mean that encourage it. I keep telling my students, I keep telling the students I talk to that For those of you who fast, you know fasting food. If they bring pilau at about 10 a.m. and that is your pilau, you don't eat it. You keep it until the right time. So I keep telling them, can you keep yourself until the right time for taking pilau? And they all just laugh and fall away. I'll tell them, you'll eat that pilau and you get tired of pilau. Even things of love, you will get love at the right time and you get tired of being loved. And wherever I tell them, they all just laugh and start saying, yeah, pilau, pilau, and pilau. So dear parents, in growth and development, the key message is for us to discuss good and bad touches. Even if it is the relative, we have seen that students get sexual exposure initially, but by the people they know, not by the stranger. The uncle who comes at home, the uncle who lives at home, the sister is the one who first opens your boy who is 8 years, who is 10 years. They start opening them. We know that when children are growing, the boys have issues and the girls have issues. We are going to discuss menstruation, but I should tell my dear parents that also the boys have issues. The boys have issues. For example, you as a parent, have you ever talked to your boy? Why do, mommy, when I wake up in the morning, why is my susu straight? Or sometimes when I'm just there, why is my penis erect? Have you talked to them that it is natural for it to be erect? Do you know what children think? One of the myths that you have to go ahead and do masturbation. I'll tell you sad stories, my dear parents. As I told you, I move in different schools and I get all these sorts of questions. A student asks, we have been told in the dormitory that for you to test manhood, when you wake up in the morning, you should actually masturbate. And if some fluid comes out, then you are a real man. Oh my God. Feel the pain. Feel the pain, my dear parent. Can you imagine maybe your son has been doing so? Maybe your son has been doing that for the last 5 years or 3 years or 2 years because there is a wrong belief that for you to test manhood, you should actually do that. In your health education, can you talk to the boy to say that this is normal from the age of 9? You tell them that when that happens, it is normal for any man to wake up, for any man at any one time to wake up when your private parts are erect. Just continue, don't do anything. You can go and bathe, you can do exercise. I'm emphasizing boys. Do you know that these days, by age 10, we have children who are experiencing wet dreams? By age 10, because it is a sign of maturity. It is a sign of puberty. Have you talked to your child? By about 11 years, 12 years. I remember one time I was talking to my boys. I actually thought he was still young. So I was trying to go around, when a boy grows up, you can have what they call a wet dream. This is when you feel like there is that intimacy between you and the girl, but it is a sign of puberty. The boy did like this. Mommy, I already had it. Oh my God, I was not ready to discuss the nitty-gritty. But do you know what? It helped me because as a mother, I was the first person to talk to my boy. I'm the one who gave correct information. So when I finished that session, I told my husband, you know what? We have to talk to our son. So then the father got time and they started talking, having a father talk. That was good for me because it was timely. I didn't know. Now, I have a parent of mine. He called me at around midnight. I actually knew him. So he was telling me that, do you know what? My son.
Doctor, you're muted. Doctor, you're muted.
Hello, doctor, are you there? Suddenly went quiet.
She's muted. And I don't think she can hear us.
It doesn't look like she's muted, actually, but
No,
she was on two
now.
gadgets. One of the gadgets.
Sorry, parents. I think I had the accidental
Yes, she's
unmuted. What I was saying is about menstruation, that by age 8 years, you should start introducing the issues of menstruation. Because by the time the child is 8, they have even had it in school. Let me tell you, these children of ours who are in secondary school, they start asking about pads. You start telling them, you see the way you are growing in height. Also, some blood might start coming. When it starts, come and talk to me. Then I tell you these are lady things. Even if you are a father, you can be able to tell your daughter that when such a thing happens, come and tell me. Or if you have your sister who is close, start talking to them. If you don't, then the child gets messed up. The child gets messed up. We know we have children who have started their periods by age 8. It has happened. And then you throw the child into anarchy because the mother runs away, the father runs away, everybody runs away, and they think there is a problem. There is not a problem. Children these days, as you see, an 8-year-old is taller than you. That growth spurt that happens is now happening as early as 8 years. So let's talk to children about that. The major questions about menstruation have been around the issue of irregularity. I want to tell you that as you health educate, when children have just started their menses, they actually miss periods for about 2 months, 3 months. Sometimes they get it earlier, like after 2 weeks, they can have little spotting. That is normal if they have just started. However, if it is more than 4 months or 3 months when they don't see their menses, then you can be able to seek advice, because then there could be other issues. I have a parent who called me recently. Her senior 2 daughter had missed 2 months. I actually shared it on the parents forum. Dear parents, please continue sharing your WhatsApp numbers onto the chat so that we can be able to add you on Stepping Stone Parents chat. And questions, actually. You keep asking because we are going to have an interactive session. And sorry, I also should say that when I finish talking, I should mention that one of the things that exposes our children these days is substance abuse. So we are going to have about 20 minutes with Dr. Odokonyero, who works at Butabika Hospital, who is going to tell us about issues of substance abuse and how they have led to indiscipline, sexual abuse, and all this misbehavior among children. So what I was saying is that the child had missed 2 months. I tell you, the parent ran up in arms. Hanifa, what is happening? She has missed 2 months. I'm not sure. Did she misbehave? So I said, please share the number with me. You introduced me to the child. The good thing, the child had known me, I think, from some radio TV program. But it was normal when I questioned and tried to interact. It was because she had just started her menses. And it was she missed it because because she had actually just missed. So I think one of the key messages, you talk to the children, it is okay to miss. If it is more than that, then you can consult. We have the parents group. But the key messages I want, the teachers who are here, parents, can we talk to our children about menstrual hygiene management? You as a health educator, what do I mean? From 9 years, start preparing at least 2 pads in the girl's handbag, not handbag, school bag. Have a small toilet bag. You tell her that you never know those things of blood. If they come, you go to your senior lady, but you have your bag here, which has at least 2 pads in it. Why is it important? You don't want your child to be ashamed when she is in class and the blood starts flowing and everybody starts laughing, because maybe it has come unexpected, especially when they have just begun. They are not sure of your dates. So as a health educator, in your corner, before you send children back, please have a toilet bag where you put at least 2 sanitary pads, 2 pads, and maybe a small piece of toilet paper, just in case. 2, talk to your children about the way actually children should be padding. I talked about our physical meeting. I can't really demonstrate here because I didn't actually organize that. But next time we should be able to talk about more details. Demonstrate. Open a pad and get a knicker and you demonstrate, how do I effectively use a sanitary pad, a pad. There are children who use reusables. These days, there are those pads they wash, but there are also those, the disposables. You as a health educator, you should be able to tell your child that when you use this pad, you are now going to be a health educator on menstrual health hygiene. First of all, be able to change your pad at least every 4 hours. 4 hourly, have a pad changed to the maximum 6 hours if there is anything, but 4 hours. Secondly, if you feel it is full, change it as often as possible. And the major problem is discarding pads. I have seen teachers here on the forum. One of the major problems that we have in schools, poor disposal of pads. The children throw pads in at the compound. They throw pads inside the toilet, then flashing. All the time you are unblocking. Can you, as a health educator, talk to your children, proper disposal of pads? In that toilet bag, you should put a small cavera, small polythene, where the child is taught that when you have removed your pad, if you are in an area where you don't see a sanitary bucket, a bucket where you can dispose, you can put your pad in a cavera until when you see the right place. I have seen, when students are doing general cleaning, you find pads on the compound. Excuse me, ladies, that is supposed to be secretive. We, the parents here, both fathers and mothers, can we talk to our children about proper disposal of pads? Washing with water and soap. Let me preempt. There is no need of using medicated, okay, at the time when children are in their menses. Actually, this is the time should actually also talk about the famous vaginal that are now on the market. The vaginal washes that are now in the market. I don't remember the names, and I don't want to stand here and discredit the market, or else they will take me to court. What I'm saying, we as health educators, we are discouraging those vaginal washes that you wash. This is a particular wash. When you use it, you'll smell good. There is no need. There is no need for that. They shouldn't use a perfume in their private parts. They shouldn't use medicated soap because that place is self-cleansing. Only if they are in their periods, they can use ordinary soap. But there is no need for particular washes. And you as a health educator, remember one of the major things we said, you as a mother, as a father, as a guardian, you are a health educator. So the key message for menstruation is that proper disposal, changing every 4 hours, but also the issue of avoiding using those medicated and whatever vaginal washes. The issue of abdominal cramps is very common. And the issue of missing school, even for boarding students, we should talk to our children that it is natural. You'll get discomfort. You'll get a little pain. You'll feel, you will not feel very normal. You'll feel stressed. Don't miss school unless if it is so severe. I've seen students in the boarding section, every time they are in their periods, they want to have a sick off. They go to the sick, I'm very sick, I have fever, I have what? We should discourage it because this is a lifetime happening. So we should tell them, unless if it is very severe, then they can be able to use drugs or whatever, but we should encourage, like, taking warm water, and other things other than trying to rely on medication. I'll ask my administrator that we shall actually be able to answer questions after I have finished a few of them before Dr. Odokonyero starts talking about drug abuse. So we have discussed menstrual hygiene. Because I remember when we used to grow up, they used to say, if you throw the pad and the dog takes it, you'll never produce. But these days in schools, we have incinerators. At home, we have dustbins. So the issue is for you to help this child. Don't keep the used pad too long. The moment you get opportunity, wrap it in the kavera, put it in the dustbin, and then you can be able to discard it. That is menstrual hygiene. Avoid. You can use old newspaper, you can use kavera, you can use whatever is good for you to be able to wrap in. So these are the key messages that I would like to give as far as menstruation is concerned. And also let children avoid using, let them try to use one pad. If they use the 2 pads and whatever, it tries to slip over. It tries to slip over, and it causes issues of discomfort and whatever. For reusable pads, we can discuss that further, but the issue is making sure you wash them, and they should actually be put in where there is sun, so that they can dry well. And if you are in school, it is actually very discomfortable based on our schools. So for schools, for parents who can afford the disposables, please, let's use them, because it is hard for them to dry. And if it doesn't dry, it brings a bad smell. And that bad smell actually is very discomfortable for children. The last message that I want in relation to menstruation and sexuality, children think that before they have their menstruation, they can mess up. They can have sex before they have their periods, that they cannot become pregnant. Let me tell you, we have children who have never seen their menses and they are in the antenatal clinic. What does that mean? That before the child saw her first period, she was pregnant and she was and is now becoming a mother. So misbehaving, whether in your period, we are going to discuss more about sex and sexuality. It is not acceptable. They have to keep that pilau until the time for unfasting. I keep telling them that your body is gold. Your private part is gold. You don't keep the gold on surface. You keep it further away, or else it will be snatched. And you wouldn't want anyone to snatch your gold, actually. So basically, of course, we talk about the underwears. When we are packing, we should pack enough underpants, and then the washing, which we have talked about. In the interest of time, I'll go to sex and sexuality. I can see lots of questions, but to avoid, the parent is asking about the use of vaginal washes. She's telling me telling me how they are also advertising on TV. My dear parent, I'm a mother. I'm a health educator. Avoid those washes. Avoid those washes. It is even actually causing other infections because naturally everybody has natural germs. In your saliva, they are natural germs. Equally, in our private parts, they are natural germs. When you use those medicated soaps, perfumed soaps, vaginal washes, and you try to clean there, you are disorganizing the natural germs that are supposed to protect. So my dear parent, as a medical person, as an experienced mother, I discourage totally use of those things in the private parts, especially for ladies. Because what happens? You disorganize the natural happening and then they get infections. It is how you could keep rubbing this skin so that it is not black. Or you keep rubbing. What happens? You are causing bruises. You are causing unnecessary, you are causing the skin to get disorganized. That's the same thing happens to the private parts. Parents, I'm here as a doctor. I will call a spade a spade. The vagina has natural germs. It has a natural scent. Don't disorganize it. And these days, where do children get information? You see, mommy gave me this. When you wash down there, you avoid the smell that is there. That is not a smell. It is a scent, my dear parents. So in the corner, as a health educator, talk to your child, especially the girl. Avoid those washes. As we continue, sex and sexuality, I have just about 10 minutes. I said when I was opening that we are so unfortunate in this era, my dear parents. Everything has been sexualized. You look at a cartoon, even cartoons. You look at an advert. Anybody kisses anywhere. Gestures, romantic gestures are happening anywhere. All these, please, as a health educator, sit in the corner and demonstrate for children who are above 12. You can even demonstrate, even if it's your fellow girl, because we know they are those people who are boasting about sexual diversity, that for them, they get attracted to the opposite sex. That's why these days, for the teachers who are here, no student should sleep with a fellow student, meaning that a girl should not sleep with a girl in the dormitory, even at home. Why? Because everything has been sexualized. The child will see what is so in a cartoon, on TV, in an advert, on phone. The issue of phones is coming right before this, after this. So the issue of sexuality, my dear parents, your tongue will not get out. Your name will not be deleted. Talk about sex and sexuality. Give age-appropriate information. We are at Stepping Stone. We are trying to develop key messages for different age groups. At the age of 13, you should be able to say that, my dear daughter, if you ever sleep with a boy and your two parts meet, you'll get sick. And let's tell students that it's not just about pregnancy. You know what? Children fear pregnancy more than diseases. We do a routine medical examination at my school, which is a college school. But when children have just come from home, you get lots of children with sexually transmitted diseases. We treat them. But do you know what? The children, when you discuss with them privately, We have counselors and coaches who try to give us some information so that we can help them in a confidential way. The children fear pregnancy more than these sexually transmitted diseases. Manya HIV, manya what? So talk to the children that these things are here. Even teachers may advance romantic messages. Even parents, uncles, the people we trust. But even sometimes I even wonder, do you know some parents try to entrust male teachers so much with their daughters that, you know, this one is the one I give money. So in that excuse, the male teacher and the girl, they get that intimacy. But you as a parent, don't you have a sixth sense? Why are you bringing it near what? Near charcoal or near fire? Yes, you can trust the teachers, but don't over close the gap. As the administration is trying to, you know, to reduce the gap, we parents try to close it too closer than is required. Let me tell you, this is an age of, I've told you everything is sexualized. The children themselves, I went into some schools where the children themselves are advancing romantic messages. The eyes, the way they look, the way they walk when they are passing administration. I tell your child to treasure her body, or else she will become a sex object. I should actually mention that we are so unlucky that usually the first sexual encounter is unintended. Most of the children, it is the peer pressure. They have gone for holiday bashes. Now it is COVID. You would have now heard what is on the news. You would have heard, go back to school. Go back to school. Is it in which beach? Da here. You are going to enjoy dance strokes. Have you ever tried to see what dances the children these days do? Let me tell you, parents, the children have engaged into romantic dances. From that bash, from that is it open of term party, the children already get sexually aroused. The way they dance. If I was in a physical meeting, I'd have put for you one of the dances, but we shall go there. So I was mentioning that most of the time, the first encounter is actually unintended. But we should be able, dear parents, to tell our children. The other thing I talked about, self-control and self-awareness. The child should know that never be in a secretive place, in a corner, when you are just a boy and a girl. I'm sure some parents will say, but what if they are discussing? Even if they are discussing, can you encourage at least let there be 3 girls and 1 boy, or 2 girls and, I mean, so that you avoid that. I told you it is normal for them to feel the electricity, to feel the sexual arousal, but don't encourage it. Even if it is a discussion, the teachers who are here, a boy always discussing with a girl in a corner, it's a problem. You are bringing problems, because I have told you that everything has been sexualized. They already having phones. They are watching the cartoons. They are soaps, okay? And I've told you most of the initial encounters are not intended. We have gone to schools when that intimacy, the children are already fingering, the children are already touching themselves. All these are unfortunate sexual encounters, and that is part of sexual abuse. You know what children have, especially the girls, they actually think that by allowing a boy maybe to touch her private parts, to touch the breast, it is a way of helping him. Why? Because the boy says, you know, you just help me. I can't study. I can't eat. My heart pumps so much. If you don't allow me to touch you, tell your students, your children, those things. He's lying. The boy is lying. He can study. He can eat. The heart can pump, but it cannot get out. You remember the famous saying that I will love you until Lake Victoria dries. Hey, these days they have .com slangs. Yesterday I was asking my daughter about the slangs. I will share with you some of the slangs. You'll be surprised and you can say, oh my God, is this what she meant? So, my dear parents, as a
Nendo kae huko nimekwambia. Have some manners.
health environment, the environments that actually lead to that sexual arousal. Sleeping. Of course, you've been in COVID. You'll say, I'm not rich. The boys sleep with the girls. My dear, even if it is a real brother, these things can happen because of the nature call. But let the children fast until the right time to break their pilau. Sexually transmitted diseases can be depicted, abnormal discharges. As a health educator, you should be able to tell your girl by about 12 years that it is normal for any woman to have a normal discharge, some degree of discharge. But if it gets milky, if it gets, smelly, if it gets green or brown, then that is abnormal. If you were a doctor, my dear, don't wait for Dr. Hanifa. You can only consult me, and I also consult because I don't know it all. So please, these are some of the abnormal discharges that may indicate that the child may have an infection. But I warn, not all infections are due to sexually transmitted diseases. It could be because the children don't know how to wash. They wash wrongly. I'll give you one common mistake, especially for girls when they are washing their private parts. It is encouraged that you first wash the front, that is the vaginal area, and then you wash the anal area. And if you are to wash both of them, you wash from the front first and then behind. Why? Because for females, the vaginal area and the anal area are too close to each other. So usually germs get from the anal area to the vaginal area. And what happens is that they get infections. So the way the children wash also is critical. So not every infection that is in the private part. Of course, infections around the private parts is more in females than in males. So we should be able to teach our children how to wash. You wash front first, then you wash back last, so that you avoid the back to front germ transmission. Okay? You are a health educator. Don't fear to say these things. I'll wind up my session by telling you about a few techniques. Create rapport. Mumanya abana baffe batutya nnyo. By the way, fenna tuli bakambwe. Yes, we are rough, we are hard. But let me tell you, as a health educator, you have now 5 days to go. For those of you who are in Uganda, you have 5 days to go. Get a corner and create that friendship a bit. That's when the child will disclose. Listen, active listen. You are telling children to develop life skills, but also you as parents, my dear. Gone are the days when you say, I have said, my dear. Can you say, I'm here to listen? Listen. That is your action. Create, join, build. It doesn't come once. Build that rapport that I'm your friend. I'm a health educator. I am a stepping stone. I've learned many things. I want to educate you. Then you let the child, you start slowly. Don't bombard everything today. No, start slowly. Then when you go to VD, like I was talking about stepping stone, health as a stepping stone to career guidance. Link health to career, because now those who are in S6, they are looking at career. So link the discussion of being healthy, avoiding sex now, staying, avoiding unfriendly relationship to career, because their mindset now is on career. What am I gonna do at university? Create rapport, try to listen. You listen, even if they say something bogus, don't try to react immediately, because then you'll spoil the rapport. It can really pain. If the child says, the other time uncle tried to open me up, take a deep breath and listen more. So when he opened, what did he do? So it helps you to get more information, But when you say, why did you allow uncle to open you? Why did you? You'll not get more information. You'll not, you'll not be a good health educator. So my dear parents, I would like to close the first session. I thank those who have joined us. I would like to answer 3 questions as Dr. Odokonyero prepares his session to be able to talk about drug abuse. Okay. A sister has asked Hajat Sarah, Dr. Hanifa, these days, our boys have a challenge of girls approaching them for sex. They demand from boys. I talked about it, my dear parents. Twogere nabo, manya abawala. It is either way now. N'abawala, nabo they enticing boys. Even the boys are enticing the girls. So twogere nabo. We have to tell them sex is you will enjoy sex at the time of breaking your fast at the right time. It is not right. It is going to disorganize your education because we know issues of sexual depute. Psychologically, omwana obwongo buba bulowooza ekyo. Even if there is just a boy who is, talking about love, leave alone the physical that they will break their virginity. By the way, let me warn you parents. Do you know that because now we are overstressing virginity, the issue of anal sex have come in very, very much amongst the adolescents because they know now you are minding so much about virginity. Oh my God. So let's keep talking. Children spend 70% of the time at school. There is need to have ethical staff. Yes, that is one of the reasons. That is Madam Aisha Namukwaya. Yes, that is why we are asking schools to call us, okay? That is why I'm asking schools to call us so that we can be able to come as a team and educate your senior ladies. We want to educate our senior ladies so that they can be able to educate the children. There are so many questions, but Dr. Odokonyero, are you online so that you can be able to start your session? Please call Dr. Odokonyero so that he gets on whatever as I answer this question. The pad wrapper can be used to wrap the used pad. Yes, the pad wrapper, in the whatever there is a pad wrapper, but sometimes I find it good to have a little cavera to add on to that. That is Madam Hamida N. Mama Naira, people have introduced vaginal steaming, so they smell good down. I'm sure it is dangerous. Now, let us differentiate things for our growing children from things of you, the adults, the wives. At this stage, I totally discourage vaginal steaming. That is now for another age. For our children, vaginal washes, vaginal steaming is not called for. Advice on use of tampons. Now, yes, I know tampons. It has been found that tampons don't break virginity. You need to teach how to use that tampon. And yes, those who use it, it is still about the good disposal. But I don't know, I don't have really bias, but I would request that if students are just beginning, can we just use the ordinary pads? But if your child is already using tampons, then you can do what? You can continue with the tampons. Sharifa Kwezi from UK, enlighten all parents on the choice of words while they are communicating. Teach about Gusuru. This is the first session. We may not finish about everything, but I said as a health educator, my dear parents, tone down. Mukakane. Nzenakakana. Hey, I don't want my daughters to hear. I was very high. Do. But when I learned linking my health, my degree of medicine, linking my pediatrics and my public health perspective of things, I started toning down so that I can create that rapport, so that I can listen. And when you listen, they start even telling you whispers, Mommy, there is a boy who is actually disturbing me because you have toned down. I'd like to give the microphone to Dr. Odokonyero to tell us about substance abuse. I'm asking my assistant, Dr. Odokonyero, he's on. So I would like him, Dr. Odokonyero, you've been unmuted. Can you take up the next 25, 30 minutes discussing about drug abuse? As a director of school, I've seen children hiding things between the loaves of bread. They get these biscuits, they open, put something between the biscuits, and they use glue and put it back, and put back in the quencher. But anyway, I welcome my colleague, Dr. Odokonyero. He's going to tell us about substance abuse. But as a medical person, in your chair, I would request parents to stretch a little as Dr. Odokonyero is coming on board. We don't see you, but I request you to stretch so that you can actually, it is actually very interesting. Dr. Odokonyero is going to tell us surprises. So after you have stretched, I'll hand over the microphone to my colleague, Dr. Odokonyero, to discuss about some other issue that is actually affecting our children. It affects sexuality, issues of, being high and indulging into violence and wrong, wrong behavior is what Dr. Odokonyero is going to discuss. I hand over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Namala.
Your
for
microphone.
inviting me. My microphone is unmuted. I hope you can hear me.
It's better now.
Wonderful. Very good morning to everybody. And thank you to Dr. Anifa for inviting me for this wonderful talk. I've been a part of the talk since the beginning, and I've really enjoyed learning from you. I'm Dr. Raymond Odokonyero. I'm a psychiatrist, but importantly, I am an addiction practitioner. So most of my work involves working with young people who are struggling with different substances of abuse. It's a great opportunity to be talking to you on the 10th of October, because it also doubles as our World Mental Health Day. And I like what Dr. Anifa has just done, because this year we want people to move for mental health. So today we are getting everybody moving for mental health, to increase awareness, to increase investment in mental health so that everybody can access mental health. And we are just saying, wherever you are, you should do something that moves your body for mental health, whether it's 5 push-ups or jogging up and down the hill, that should suffice. Great, I have been given the opportunity to share my screen, so I will dive right into my conversation with you. So, what we want to talk about today is substance abuse among young people. And every time we talk about young people and substance abuse, really we are talking about the brain. Drug addiction, drug abuse resides in the brain. So whenever you're talking about substances of abuse, think the brain. Why do people start to use drugs? Well, people start to use drugs for all sorts of reasons, really. Majority of the reasons you're familiar with, they want to have fun. It's pleasurable to do it. Some people are in pain and they want to forget. And this particular reason here of pain is very important as far as young people are concerned. And I'll talk about that in just a short while. Some people use drugs to function. They think that it's going to help them to achieve a certain purpose, to be a better sportsman or sportswoman, to pass an exam, to not sleep in the night so that they can read all night long, and things like that. But for majority of the young people, it's because of experimentation and peer pressure. Try this out. You're not cool. You want to belong to our group, you need to be using this kind of substance. So that kind of pressure gets to young people and informs their drug use choices. Specifically for young people, I'm sorry, my keys are just getting stuck a little bit, but there we go. Specifically for young people, there are some things that make them quite unique. And I think Dr. Anif has been attempting to discuss some of the uniqueness of young people from a sexual and reproductive point of view. From an addiction point of view, we find that young people are generally risk takers. They live for the next thrill, and they are seeking out these thrills all the time, whether it is skydiving or skiing or doing things that pump up their adrenaline, usually appeals to young people. And drugs is one of such things. But the other thing is that young people are kind of socially disconnected. And they are socially disconnected because our social construct is one that recognizes extremes. It recognizes the younger extreme between 0 to 10. You're still a baby, you're still a child, and people recognize you as such, and you have rights as a child. And then when you're 18 and above, you're recognized for being an adult, and they expect you to behave like an adult. There are some lost years in between there, what we are now calling the period of adolescence, from 10 to 19 years. These are people who are neither children nor adults. And when they act like adults, we caution them and say, look, you're not yet old enough. And when they act like children, we equally tell them, stop behaving like kids. Don't you know you're now not a kid anymore? So who are they? What are they? Are they young? Are they old? What are adolescents? Now, if you cannot define that, then understand that the adolescents themselves find it quite confusing. So what do? They get disconnected from you, the old ones, as well as from the children. And when they do that, they may end up in groups that are more accepting. And usually drug-using groups are extremely accepting. The final reason for young people's motivation to start using drugs is that they are self-medicators. And earlier on, I mentioned that people start to use drugs because they're in pain. And sometimes it's hard to understand that young people are going through things. And mostly it's because we are not paying attention to them. But they are going through all sorts of pains that they need to feel better about. They are being bullied about what they look like, how they sound, what their growing breasts look like, what their smell is like. All these kinds of things, small bullying by peers is causing them pain. But also us as parents, we are not very careful in the way we address things. The way we address things to young people is a bit reckless, is a bit uncaring, which and then you make references to what their appearance is like. For a very sensitive age group like that, your comments do not go without causing an effect on them. Some of the children are being bullied by teachers. They're being bullied by other adults within their environment. So they are in pain, and sometimes they need to treat that pain. So they become self-medicators and end up using drugs to try and feel good. All right. So does it mean that anybody who starts to use drugs becomes a drug addict? Well, the answer is actually a big no. It's a very progressive process that starts from you just experimenting on the recreational drug to you using it a little bit more occasionally when the occasion demands. For example, when young people go for bashes, or they are having their finalist parties, drugs would come in. Those become occasional users. But there are those who will go on to become more regular users, such that every weekend they'll start engaging in the drug use. And finally, a small percentage of people will become addictive users or compulsive users. And this is how it progresses. When substances are still being used recreationally, you're thinking about it among many other things that you think about family, friends, school, exercise, work, food. You think about substances once or twice. But along the way, as you progress, then substances start to take up a big part of your thought process and about your life. And before you know it, it has replaced everything else. Family doesn't matter, school does not matter, friends do not matter, food doesn't matter, and it's only substances. When somebody's in this stage, we call that addiction or dependence on a substance. So you want to be able to watch that. So this is the pyramid of what drug use pattern looks like. Drug use pattern at the bottom of that pyramid here, where there are experimenters. These are very, very many children. Very many adolescents are here. The average age for most adolescents starting to experiment on drugs is 14, 15 years. So at 14, 15, many adolescents are here. And as they continue, many of them will not continue to use the drugs. Even though they experimented, they may not continue to use it. So the pyramid gets smaller as it goes up. The smallest group of people are the dependent users, people who actually get dependent on the substance. Now, when people are dependent on a substance, if we were to turn that thing upside down and draw another pyramid, the resources required to rehabilitate somebody who is dependent is so much more, that the base of the health economics would be so wide here and much smaller for trying to help people who are experimenters. I thought that's good for us to start to understand what substance is, first of all, before we even go to find out what should we do about it. Because I think most people in Uganda haven't taken much interest in studying effects of substances or even understanding, informing themselves about drugs. So what is it? What are these drugs? These drugs are things we call psychoactive substances. Psycho really refers to the mind, and it's referring to drugs that can affect your brain pretty much. And how do they affect your brain? Well, it affects your brain by affecting the way you behave, the way you feel, the way you think, and the way you perceive things that are happening around you. Some drugs change your mood, either make you feel extremely happy or tone your feelings down, switch off your feelings so that you become numb. Other drugs make you think faster or think more, aggressively, more without any shyness. Others change the way you perceive the world. Time can change. You can slow down time by taking these medications. And of course, there are others which will impact on your behavior. If you were a shy person who couldn't approach a boy or a girl when you take the substance, now you're brave enough to do so. These drugs can affect you either way, positively or negatively. Usually it will depend on the extent, how large the substance you've taken is, or the type that you've taken. And usually the types of drugs that adolescents take, really, for us, we classify them according to what these drugs will do to the brain. Some of them are going to stimulate your brain, and we call them stimulants. And they include things like cocaine, amphetamines, and even nicotine and caffeine that we take in the coffee. There's a special group here called the opioids, the ones for which the police is always chasing people around for. It's also called opium or narcotics. They have their own class, and we'll explain that. They are the depressants, things like alcohol, things like benzodiazepines, the sleeping pills and whatnot. These will slow down the CNS and make somebody feel a sense of tranquility. And then, of course, you have the hallucinogens that make people see things, feel things that others cannot feel. And they include things like magic mushrooms. As a parent, I think it's important that you inform yourself about these substances. And I've brought a few, if we had met physically, I would have brought a few of these substances so that you can see them. Because if you don't even know what it is or what it should look like, you will hardly tell that your child is using it or your adolescent is using it. This slide was just re-emphasizing exactly what we talked about. In some literature, you'll find drugs being called legal or illegal. From an addiction point of view, from a health worker's point of view, it doesn't really matter to me whether that drug is legal or it is not legal. My issue is about safety, the safety of the drug to the child or to the adolescent. There are some drugs in our community here which does not fit neatly in any of the categories that I mentioned. They may not stimulate you. We can't call them stimulants. We can't call them depressants or hallucinogens. They might do a bit of all of those things. So the famous one is marijuana. You guys should be a little bit familiar with marijuana. It's quite common in schools. The kids are always smoking it behind the toilets. And marijuana does all sorts of things to you. It can make you hallucinate. It can depress your CNS and you feel calm, a sense of, tranquility. It can also stimulate you and make you, excited and make you want to dance and things like that. Some farmers have even been known to take marijuana so that they can get energy to dig and things like that. And Uganda is growing quite a lot of marijuana. Areas of Busia, Masaka, and Arua, those are the biggest growers of marijuana in this country. But there are these which are brought from Kenya and from Somalia. The cat, commonly referred to as mira, that's also common, and sometimes we cannot place them in one category or the other. Right, so how do kids take these substances in? How do the adolescents use these substances? Well, there are many ways they take things in. They smoke, they snort, they swallow, they inject themselves, inhale fumes. Some put things under their tongues, what we call sublingual. Other substances are just smeared on the skin, and we call those topical. But there are so many more ways that adolescents actually use substances. Just like Dr. Anifa, I too do school visits, and we've done some studies in schools. And some of the routes of administration of drugs was shocking. Some in a certain girls' school we went to, some of the girls were soaking pieces of cloth in alcohol and then inserting those very pieces into their vagina. And some of them would, soak the tampon, the vaginal tampon, into alcohol, and that's what they would insert there. So there are many, many more ways out of these ones that adolescents use to administer the drugs. All right, so which of these means actually causes rapid action? Well, most of the things that adolescents smoke, those should hit the brain faster than any other means, followed by when they inject. So you should get very concerned when your adolescent is smoking things or injecting things, whether injecting it in the vein, which takes about 15 seconds to 30 seconds, or injecting it in a muscle, which takes about 3 minutes or so. So be very concerned when these 3 routes of administration is what your adolescent is using, because that is how fast the brain is getting affected. Other routes of administration, take a bit of time, but they're equally effective. So what are these substances we use? Well, The kids are using alcohol. Uganda is now the #1 alcohol consumer in the world. #1. Previously, we were #2 after Russia, but now we are #1. We consume 23.7 liters of pure alcohol per person per year. That is extreme drunkenness in this country. And our kids are among the people using them. Some of the stimulants we talked about, take a keen look at these pictures. I hope you can all see the screen. The one I want to really, many of you can probably identify cocaine. When you see anything powdery, something that looks like white maize flour, you want to be concerned. And usually the kids will be snorting them. But they can also come like small rock bars, and they're usually white. That is crack, kind of like the poor man's cocaine. So it's a lot cheaper, but has more impurities in it. So that means the effect will be worse than for somebody who took this type of cocaine. But the one I want you to be really concerned about is finding Katwe salt-like looking substances in your kids' bags or in their rooms. If you find things that look like rocks, small little pieces of salt, that is most likely going to be methamphetamine. And in a few slides, we are going to see why methamphetamine might be the worst possible drug for your child to be taking. Of course, cannabis looks like that. You should also look at the implements that they use. There are different types of pipes that people use for smoking. So you want to be careful when you see implements like that to understand that perhaps it means we are dealing with drug use here. They come in different packages like that. But for what most of the adolescents use will usually be small packagings packed in small pieces of paper or small paper bags, and usually easy to conceal. It can fit in small spaces in a pocket, in the lining of their clothes and things like that. So let's now talk about addiction. What is it? Maybe it starts with what it is not. It is not a character flaw. It is not even a personality disorder or a moral failing. Unfortunately for us as parents, oftentimes this is where it all ends. This child is weak, this child is bad-mannered, this child is immoral, this child doesn't listen to me. All those things you're saying say nothing about addiction. Addiction should actually be a health problem. So what is addiction? Addiction is actually a brain disease, but it's a brain disease that runs a long course, what we call chronic, and it is relapsing. Now, addiction, if you remember the little pyramid I showed you, we call them dependent. Up on top of the pyramid, there are very few people. So not all kids that start to use drugs will end up being addicted. But should you have a child that is addicted to one substance or another, please understand that that is a disease and you're not going to treat it at home. So kindly bring that child to us so that we can manage. And the science behind addiction is a lot right now. But I can demonstrate to you why this is a disease like any other disease you know. For anything to be a disease, it must alter the normal structure. It must change the way your cells look or they work, any body part. In this case, for addiction, we are saying the organ is the brain. And it is a syndrome because it has a set of signs and symptoms, as we shall see. A symptom is usually that thing which the child will tell you. The person suffering will tell you what they experience. For example, for physical illnesses, children may experience stomach ache, fatigue, and dizziness. In addiction, they'll report things like cravings, anxiety when they are not using. So in that sense, addiction has signs and symptoms. You can also find signs of addiction like abscesses. Abscesses are small boils that form at the site where injections have been given. So when they are using, IV drugs and IMs, they may form those small little blisters, and those can be, and you'll see them in a line. Usually it's following a vein. If you see a child's hand has several little prick marks along a line, then you understand that that child uses IV drugs. We can now do imaging to show us the extent of damage in the brains, and usually it will look like this. This slide shows you changes that can happen in a brain, and I won't bore you with the details, but the top picture is the one of the brain, and the one on your left is a normal brain, a healthy brain, and the one on the right is a diseased brain. You can see that they don't look the same. The colors are different, and that's an illustration of an actual change in the brain because of drugs. The lower picture is that of the heart. If your heart got diseased, the one on the left is healthy, the one on the right is diseased. What this illustrates is that addiction and heart disease, they both cause biological changes. In that sense, they are both diseases. We know that for AIDS, HIV is the causative agent. For a sore throat, then Streptococcus, a bacterium, is the causative agent. How about for addiction? Certainly, whichever substance you're addicted to is the causative agent. But there are many other factors that come into play when it comes to developing addiction. Just like somebody in the family can get flu and not everybody gets it in the end, many people can start to use drugs, but only a few of them may develop addiction. We have different vulnerabilities to substances and to diseases, and this is not any different for addiction. I think this is all the same. For a big extent, some of the things that contribute to your weakness towards developing addiction is what you carry in your blood, in your genes. Half the risk of becoming an addict is usually because you're carrying a gene from your forefathers, and it only waits for an environment to be right for it to express itself. These slides are available, and I think you will be able to get them. I did mention earlier that addiction is a chronic brain disease that is relapsing. Chronic simply means it runs a long course and cannot be cured. However, it can be managed. This is a very important point for me as an addiction practitioner, because usually when you parents come to me with your adolescents, you're hoping I'll give you the one tablet which will stop this whole addiction. And sometimes I take a moment to explain to the parents that addiction is actually chronic, so I can't cure it. I can manage it, but we cannot cure it. It's just like hypertension. You have hypertension, we can't cure your hypertension, but we can manage it. If you have diabetes, we can't cure it, we can manage it. If you have asthma, we can't cure your asthma, but we can manage it. So that is in the same category as those chronic diseases. We did mention earlier that substances can change the structure of your brain and the functioning of your brain. And we said that when you develop addiction, then your chances of relapse are also high. But it's no higher than for the other chronic diseases we have. People with diabetes have 30 to 50% chance of developing relapse. People with hypertension have worse relapse rates than people with addiction. And people with asthma have equally worse rates than people with addiction. So it's not anything new. It's a chronic and relapsing illness. Now, two words I need to bring to your attention here: a relapse and something called a lapse. A relapse is when the child who had previously stopped using drugs goes back to using it in exactly the same way as they used to use it before. That's relapse. If the pattern of use becomes exactly the same as before they came for treatment, we say that child has relapsed. But they can get a lapse. A lapse is a one-off. The child came for treatment, is doing better, but then there's a party at home and there's a lot of alcohol, or there's a lot of this and that, and he takes once or she takes once. Then that is called a lapse. So there's a relapse and there's a lapse. A relapse is the worst thing. A lapse is sometimes doesn't lead to much. So a major reason that people take a drug is because they like what it does to their brains. Why do we like what drugs do to our brains? Well, it's because the brain has a mechanism of making you appreciate certain things through a system that we call the reward system. I think earlier on when Dr. Anifa was talking, you remember her telling you that touches are bad, generally bad. No matter how well-intentioned it is, a touch creates a feeling in somebody. And you imagine for a young person being touched, even if it was an innocent touch or presumably innocent touch, the child's brain has something called a reward pathway. And that reward pathway, its job is to alert you that whatever is happening to you feels good. And you should appreciate it. So the brain will pour a certain chemical to make you feel good because you're being touched. That is the reward pathway. Unfortunately, that's also the exact same place where drugs target. They target that reward pathway. The reward pathway is not something that drugs bring to your brain. It's already there. And if you can see this image, this very dark purple here, this is the reward pathway. Just like you have different parts of the brain responsible for different things like movement, sensation, vision, coordination, even memory and judgment, you also have a part of the brain responsible for reward, such that if something good happens to you, you're likely to remember it fondly moreover, and you're likely to repeat that behavior again. If a young adolescent girl was hugged by a boy and she felt good during the embrace, it's very likely that she will want to be hugged again. And that's how the reward pathway works. So your brain is wired such that you should be able to sustain those kinds of activities that bring you pleasure. There are things, the reason the reward pathway exists is because we have what we call natural rewards, like food, like water, like sex, like love and nurturing. Those are natural rewards for which that part of the brain exists. It exists so that when we eat good food or we eat food, we should feel good and feel content. When we drink water, when we were thirsty, we should feel good. And have sex, it feels good to have sex. Or when you're nurtured, you feel loved by somebody, then you feel good. The reason you feel good when these natural things happen is because that part of your brain is producing a certain chemical to make you feel good. And that chemical, I'm going to introduce its name shortly. It's called dopamine. So from this talk, you might remember nothing else, but you remember dopamine. It's a feel-good chemical, which your brain produces so that it can sustain your life, so that you do things that feel good repeatedly. And examples of what that can do is when we eat food, your dopamine moves from 100. At all times, we have about 100% dopamine in our brains. But when we eat food, that level goes up to 150%. So after eating, you feel content. Even if you were quarreling with someone, chances are you'll stop quarreling because you're now happy. That's why people don't fight after eating food. You feel a sense of contentment. And over time, that amount will fall until you have to eat food again. And the same image is, the same for sex. When you have sex, your dopamine levels doubles. So it's up to about 200%. And that should also fall over some time. So you're most likely to repeat sex. You're most likely to repeat eating of food because they keep your dopamine up and they raise your dopamine levels up. So 200% sounds like a lot right now. But this image here, I'm sorry, let's just go back one. This is what the natural rewards do to you. When you eat food, you drink water, it only excites you this much. But drugs, when you take artificial drugs, it will excite your brain this much. Imagine how different these drums look. So it means drugs of abuse are extremely exciting to the brain. And if that brain is still a young, growing brain, then that is a big problem. See examples of what cocaine does to your brain. Where food only excites you to 150%, cocaine excites your brain up to 350%. Where food only excites you to 150%, nicotine excites you to 220%. Where alcohol only excites, food excites you to 150, alcohol is exciting to 200% of dopamine. But look at methamphetamine, that thing which I told you looks like salt. So food can make your dopamine go up to 150. Methamphetamine takes it to 1,200%. Now, the more exciting a drug is, the more likely it is that you will get addicted to it. So you only have to take methamphetamine once and you're hooked onto it. You only have to take cocaine a couple of times and you're hooked. Things like nicotine, which are less exciting, and alcohol, you may take over a longer period of time. But these ones, which are extremely exciting, you don't want your child to be using them over and over again, or even to start them at all. All right, I'll skip these. But just to say that because you've taken a drug and your dopamine levels have gone so high, your brain tries to balance things out. The brain doesn't like things which are in imbalance, state of imbalance. So it tries to create new receptors, to lower the amount of dopamine, to shut down some parts of your brain that are taking it up. And the net effect is that the dopamine levels will fall. But it is falling so rapidly that it makes you sad. This is what hangover is. The next day, because the dopamine levels have crashed, you feel sad, you become blue, you become moody, and you don't like things, And when you're feeling like that, chances are you will want to take the drug again so that you can feel better, you feel higher. So prolonged drug use, from what we have said, changes the brain in fundamental and long-lasting ways. And we can demonstrate using scans now that the brain changes. This image here has red in it. This image has no red. All the dopamine receptors here have been gone. So this is a damaged brain. And the damage is because of cocaine or any other drug for that matter. And you can see more examples here. Normal brain, now there are changes, there are changes, there are changes. These are all diseased brains now. Same here. This is a diseased brain. This is a normal brain. This one in the middle is diseased. And then after treatment, the brain goes back to near normal. You can see this one and this one look just about the same. So what this slide tells us, which is very important message for me, is that addiction is actually treatable. So bring those adolescents so that we can treat them and return them to normal. Why doesn't everyone who tries a substance become addicted? We mentioned earlier, our vulnerabilities are different. And this is a very important point because when the adolescent is being encouraged by his colleagues, come and try this, come and try that, really, they are forgetting that we all have different vulnerabilities. Our genetics is different. Our environments from which we come are different. So just because somebody has taken this substance for a long time and they seem to be doing okay, doesn't mean that we should also take it. We have different vulnerabilities. And it's because of the genes and the environment, which are different for each and every one of us. Okay. One of the other things that we mentioned is that one of the factors to you becoming addicted or not is how you use the substance. And we said that when you smoke or inject the substance using IV, you increase its addiction potential. So these are my final slides. How do we as parents, how do we recognize that there is substance abuse among our adolescents? Well, start to look for patterns. Oftentimes we are looking for an isolated event. Has he come back drunk? Adolescents are extremely highly intelligent beings, and they will do everything to ensure that you don't find out what they are doing out there. They will chew gum, they'll use all sorts of perfumes to mask the smell of whatever it is they think, they might have taken. So for you as a parent, try to look for a pattern. Is there a pattern of late coming? Every Friday, does he disappear and come back at a certain time? Or does she? Is there a pattern of being high? Are they more excited than usual, especially after having disappeared for a few minutes? Does the adolescent inject medicines which are available orally? Can you observe that they are intoxicated, they are high, or they are in withdrawal? They come back in the evening, they look happy and excited. In the morning, they look extremely sad, like they are sick. That would be withdrawal. Do they bring up excuses so that you can give them money to go and buy drugs? And usually they will say things like they are not feeling well, they need to do this test or another. Some of the adolescents will know exact kinds of medications, their type, and as well as the amounts that they need to take. Such very specific information that the rest of the family hardly knows should raise some question marks. Look for a pattern in which adolescents threaten or harass other people. When they are threatening and harassing people, that's a behavioral change that you want to take note of. Notice a pattern in which adolescents alter or steal or sell scripts for medication. Some medications require a doctor's signature. Have they stolen a previous script that you were given from the hospital? And things like that. So look out for patterns. There are other things that you can look out for. Some symptoms. Things like anorexia, very low appetite, and nausea. People want, they always feel like vomiting. Abdominal pains and cramps that you can't explain. Hot and cold flashes. One moment they are wearing a jacket, the next they are taking it off and they have to, fan themselves. Look out for such things. Do they complain of body aches all the time, muscle twitching? They could be in withdrawal. How about sleep? Does the adolescent sleep? Do they crave for drugs? Do you hear them trying to get out of the house at unholy hours like 3 a.m.? Are they restless, anxious? And there are many other things you can look out for. Things like, access to a room and things like that. There are people who will stay indoors all the time. They'll isolate themselves. When it's time to eat, they won't want to come and eat with the rest of the family. They want to come out later on their own when nobody's seeing. So you want to be able to pick out those kinds of patterns and symptoms. And there are also some signs. Signs are now things you yourself will be able to see. And you can see many signs. Yawning. All the time, yawning. Those could be signs of withdrawal from drugs. Some of them will tear for no reason, what we call lacrimation. Tears are running down their faces all the time when nothing has really provoked it. And some people, you look at them in their eyes and the pupils look so wide, as if they are looking in the dark, and yet it's broad daylight. When it is well lit, the pupils should be small, not big. There are those who are sweating all the time, what we call diaphoresis, excessive sweating, and they are mopping themselves all the time and taking showers all the time because they are sweating too much. Some of them will have a flu that doesn't seem to ever go away, the running nose that doesn't seem to ever stop. You want to stop and wonder, is this kid snorting something? How about the shakes, tremors in the hands when they're holding a glass of water? Is it firm? How about a piece of paper? Can they hold it firm? How about the hair on their skins? Sometimes the hair is just standing as if it's cold all the time. We call that pilerection. And of course, sometimes they will have diarrhea and vomiting in the absence of a physical illness. What should you do? I think I'll re-echo some of the things that Dr. Anif has been talking about. You need to make friends with your adolescents. Genuine friendship that is not judgmental. But it has to be an effort, given the world we are living in today where, our work takes up most of our time and energy. It's monumental that we make friends, we make time to be with our adolescents. And it's very, very important that when you make friends with your adolescents, you enable them to express their views without attracting judgment or penalty. Talk about and set realistic rules about substance use in the home. Just like Dr. Nifa was encouraging you to talk about sex, talk about drugs as well. Set the boundaries and the rules. And for goodness sake, if you come from a family in which, in the previous lineage, in an older lineage, there is substance use, uncles that died because of this or that kind of drug, just ensure that the rules are clear from the start, that we do not use substances. Know who your adolescent friends are. Very important. Sometimes the adolescent is good at masking certain things. At home, they behave normally. But how about out there? Who do they consider to be their friends? Are they Rastafarians? Are they, tattooed kids? So you want to make sure that you know who the friends are. Set time for fun, to engage them. Things that can produce dopamine. Go hiking together. Go for a ride together. Buy your own bicycle, buy them a bicycle, go all around your town. That is important because that increases the amount of dopamine in their brain. So you want to do more dopamine producing things. Planting trees is a great way to increase dopamine. Taking walks in the bush is a great way to increase dopamine. All right, so you want to engage them in some things that are more fun. Importantly, manage the family dysfunction. Sometimes adolescents are starting to use drugs because they are treating themselves of all the dysfunction that is in the family, all the quarreling, all the fighting between mommy and daddy, all the yelling. Sometimes they'll start to use drugs because of that. How do you communicate to your spouse? Is there respect? Where do you settle, your differences from? Is it right there in the sitting room in front of the children? Do you make the children take sides? So that family dysfunction is very important to manage because sometimes the child is just a symptom of the disease in the family. And if your child is a symptom of the disease in the family, then you don't have to treat the child. You have to treat the disease itself. That's the family dysfunction. Please deal with codependency roles. Due to time, we haven't had time to talk about what the family contributes to a child using substances. But every member of the family, knowingly, unknowingly rather, is contributing to the dependence on a substance of one of its members. And there are many codependency roles. There are people who are heroes, someone who wants to save the family. And then there are those who can become scapegoats. They keep making excuses for the individual taking drugs. Sometimes when you've identified that an adolescent is using drugs, both of you as parents come together and say, what are we going to do about this child? And you decide on what to do, except one of you continues to give the child money. That is a codependency role. We want to get rid of such things. And then seek professional help. It exists. Come to us so that we can help you to assess the child, the adolescent, and be able to advise. I'll end by saying, you should always remember that no one ever plans to become addicted, not even that child of yours that now seems to be struggling with drugs. When they set out, it wasn't with the intention that they should get addicted. They were experimenting, and then this thing became a disease. During my school visits, I have discovered many things, many myths about substances. And before it was a bit shocking to me, but now I take it in good stride. Find out what kind of myths your children have about substances. And they do have them, parents. Please find out. In one of the schools where I visited, the adolescents, for example, the girls thought if you took some alcohol, you couldn't get pregnant when you have sex. Others had all sorts of myths about drugs and passing exams. They thought certain drugs made you intelligent, made you brighter, and things like that. So teachers, head teachers, parents, please engage these students. Hear from them without being particularly judgmental about them. They will tell you these things, what they think about certain drugs. And if you should identify, the reason to identify those myths is so that we can correct them. I thank you for listening to me. I thought that Dr. Nifa did such a wonderful job with the sexual reproductive health, but then I thought adding the drug component would also bridge it in quite well, because many of the decisions adolescents make, they usually make under the influence of some drug or another. So let's be careful. Let's watch out for our kids. Let's be our kids' keepers and talk to them, understand what they are going through, and deal with them together. I thank you, and I will end my screen share here, and I'll be happy to respond to a few questions here and there if they should exist. I think that Dr. Anifa is going to be doing the Q&A session. So I would like to hand this back over to her, and until I get some specific questions. Thank you.
Doctor, unmute yourself.
Doctor, you are silent. We can't hear you.
Oh, now I'm on, I think.
Yes.
Thank you, dear parents.
Yes, you are.
You've made use of this post-Uganda weekend day, which is Saturday, by becoming health educators. And we are becoming health educators in the very important field of,
Doctor, you're muted again.
Sorry, I think I'm on again.
You're on again. Switch off one of the devices, ma'am.
Okay. Can you animate that? So what I was saying is that this is a very important subject. We linked both.
Doctor, switch off
yes?
one of your devices because there's an echo because they're next to each other.
Okay. Where's the laptop? Thank you. Sorry for that distraction. My administrator is trying to help me here. So we linked both sexuality, reproductive health, and the issue of drugs, because it is a silent killer. It is in our homes, It is in schools. For us who have schools, we see it. We see children becoming very depressed. Then all of a sudden, the child becomes manic, very high and all that. So Dr. Raymond, one of the questions is that students take drugs so that they can stay awake for winter. I hope you know what winter means. This is when they are actually reading, to help them read. Advice over that. The other question is that actually students these days can mix some drugs like Piriton with the tramadol, so that I think they become high. We don't know whether you have heard about that. And you know, of course, we have issues that, you know, the students can easily access these drugs over pharmacies. And so want your advice over that. Someone was saying that actually parents do not know that their kids are taking drugs. But of course, this one you have partly answered when you mentioned that. I mean, try to look at those signs, feelers, but also talking to your, you know, to your children about issues of drug abuse, their friends and all that. Probably you may get a feeler. Someone is asking, is Molondo also a drug of addiction? Molondo, I know you know Molondo. This is a hard one, but and Ismail Kakumbi has raised his hand. So I ask that you unmute Ismail as doctor plans to answer these questions. You are unmuted, Ismail Kakumbi. Please raise your question as doctor raises some of the other questions on the chat.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, thank you very much for your great contribution. It's so great coming from my side as a teacher and a youth worker. There are few things I've experienced. I don't know whether you as medical expert will endorse this as a myth or reality. What I sensed in my experience as a teacher and a youth worker and working in the immigration field in the UK, I came across both young people and adults with having a bit of behavior change. Some people who were too quiet or calm change sometimes to be a bit aggressive. That's between couples. Maybe somebody has a wife who is calm or a husband, but sometimes gets aggressive. The other bit is being shaky. Somebody starts shaking sometimes when they are talking or when they are walking, they shake. And I emphasize this because I've come across it when at airports, when immigration officers stop people coming in and out of the country. If somebody shakes a little bit, they do thorough checks. According to the confirmation from them, that is one of the signs that somebody is using drugs. The other bit where I need a doctor or yourself to come or address, what's your advice to us as parents and young people to get rid or minimize suicidal cases in our communities? Unfortunately, many of these kids are in the medical field. Some of them are studying medicine, some of them are doctors, some of them are nurses. So they know which medication they can apply or they can inject themselves to commit suicide. So throw some light around the back. Thank you so much for this great job. You've done a great job. So I thank yourselves and the Zoom community to go ahead with this kind of talks.
Okay.
With them to have ongoing projects or talks like this. They make a big difference to our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prince. You have been unmuted. So, Doctor, you can gather all these questions because we have about 10 minutes to finish.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
First, I thank Allah that you came out with such beautiful lectures concern our kids and mental health as well. So my concern is, as you mentioned, all these problem we are facing in our communities, in schools, and the doctor mentioned about the using drugs, misusing. Basically, what I would like to know, what I would like to ask, is that in a way the government or the Minister of Education to bring these issues in Uganda curriculum so they can teach abuse of the drugs and sexual orientation in schools to be a part of as a curriculum in Ugandan schools. Because
Okay, thank you very much, Prince.
I live in the UK, but this sexual education, they teach it children even in the schools here. So basically, why the as Dr. Namala, you got a lot of voices. I mean, you have a lot of potentials how you can voice it so they it can be a part of a Ugandan curriculum in all schools, so kids can have sex education, drug education, so which can help our community.
Okay, thank you very much. Someone with an Arabic name, please ask, and then we let Doctor respond, and I also respond, and then we close the session. As I mentioned, this is the first stepping stone parent session, so we shall have other sessions so that we can be able to handle other issues. While issues of suicide is a whole discussion which we can't finish right now, but you also know that about a week ago, one of the students committed suicide because the parent had withdrawn a phone. And you might find it may not have just been a phone, maybe a phone addiction, but maybe the phone was used for other things, maybe to purchase drugs, maybe to watch porn or other, issues. So, I mean, we have a lot to do, and that's one of the roles of Stepping Stone Parents Community that we are trying to commit to create. So I request parents to send your numbers on the chat so that we can add you onto there. So I request Dr. Odokonyero to respond to those questions, please.
Yes. Okay, thank you for these sets of questions. I think that I'll have to start with
5 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, I'll make this quick. I'll start with Prince, the most recent questions on curricular development change in Uganda. I think that would be the ideal to incorporate mental health and substance use training in teacher training schools, but as well in school curricula. And many civil society organizations are really fighting hard to get that done.
Dr. Raymond, can I chip in just right away that Uganda
sure.
has developed what they have called a national health sexuality framework. But that framework has not been started because other people like religious leaders have, become resistant. They think that us talking to the children about sex and sexuality, we are actually enlightening them and telling to go and sleep around with boys or girls. Yeah. That's why for us, out of my own purpose, I'm like, let's start something. We are going to continue moving in schools if invited. And then we start because we know that these things are happening, even if some religious leaders think that talking is a way of enlightening them so that they do what is not wanted. So that is the situation in Uganda. So you can go ahead because I've eaten 1 minute of yours.
Thank you for adding your voice to that. Ismail asked two great questions. One of them was on suicide. Actually, just to let him know that the entire month of September is usually dedicated to suicide prevention. And I gave quite a number of talks regarding suicide. And preventing suicide really is everybody's task. It's not a mental health professional's task, because the people who are crying out for help are out there And chances are we are aware when they cry out for this kind of help. Just one thing you should know about suicide is that I can use the example that Dr. Anifa just used of the child that committed suicide. That suicide wasn't because of a phone. The things that lead somebody to suicide are many, and a lot of things will have already been building up, and the phone just becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. So all along, this child has been going through things. If we are to dig, we'll find domestic abuse, verbal whatever, emotional abuse, bullying at schools, and things like that. So the phone is just tip of the iceberg. In terms of drugs and aggression, this is obvious. If you can remember from my definition of what a drug of abuse is, it's something that should change your mood. And one of the moods you have is that of anger and irritability. So drugs can make you angry and irritable. And when you're angry and irritable, small things can make you react in big ways and you can become aggressive. Obviously, shaking and tremors are symptoms of drug withdrawal. So they are right to be able to check you for some drugs at the borders. Is Molondo a drug of addiction? Well, I can't answer that for you, but ask yourself, when you take Molondo, does your mood change? Does it change the way you perceive things? Does it change your behavior? If it does, then that thing is a psychoactive drug.
That is a good one.
I think the second last question was on mixture of drugs, Piriton and Tramadol, very common. By the way, I'll tell you that in my among my patients, drug concoctions are among the biggest problems. And they pose huge management challenges. Because as you can see from that list, let's just use the case of Piriton and Tramadol. They belong to two different classes of drugs.
Exactly.
One of them is a depressant, the other one is an opioid. Now mix those two together, the management becomes extremely difficult.
Exactly.
And these mixtures are usually born of myths that people have, things that are going around their groups. Can you imagine? I took this and that, and I felt like this. And those myths need to be busted. Yeah, they need to be busted immediately through education and engagement fora like this. I think the last one was on, I think it was on drugs. I said something about drugs. I can't remember what the first question was you asked me, Dr.
I think the last question on Viagra mimics Molondo. Because someone who asks about Viagra.
In this case, my last is your first question. I don't think I wrote it well. What was the first question on your list? Because I answered them backwards.
Yeah, but I think you have answered all of them. Just that.
Oh, it was something about winter, right? Studying in the night.
Yes, taking drugs so that they can winter, and I hope you know what winter means.
Absolutely, and I know winter is being able to wake up at unholy hours and to keep awake so that you can read. Again, all these things are born of myths, of misinformation that exists among them. So we've got to address those kinds of concerns. I know that some schools don't even allow children in the classroom within certain hours, and those structural, endeavors are important as well. But we must address the myths of these children. We learn them, appreciate them, and re-educate them. That's what we need to do. I think that is that. Dr. Nifa, yours is muted. Please come back.
Doctor, you're muted. Dr. Hanifa, you're muted. Please unmute.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is always a limiting factor. I'd like us to end here. I can see lots of questions. I have lots of questions in my inbox. I'd like to thank Umma Connect, who has hosted us for this important first session of Stepping Stone for Parents, whereby we have agreed that we are all going to be health educators by being more knowledgeable and by putting health education as one of our checklists as we talk to our children, as children go back to school in Uganda that are starting next week on Thursday for candidates. I thank Dr. Raymond Odokonyero that we have actually linked substance and the issues of misbehavior as far as our adolescent boys and girls' bodies are concerned. We are trying to tell you parents that we should demystify. Let's demystify information. Let's be the correct information givers, other than children getting information from peers, the peer pressure. Children don't have life skills. We've discussed a few of them. What I promise is that we are going to grow the Stepping Stone Parents community. And Stepping Stone stands for My Health, a Stepping Stone. All these things we are talking about is that we are making ourselves healthy, our children healthy, so that is a stepping stone for our career, for being goal-oriented among our children. I request parents, I'll leave about 2 minutes for parents to continue sharing their numbers so that we add you onto our parents group. Thank you very much. We are really indebted that you've been able to join. And I'm sorry that we've added the 20 minutes. It wasn't our intention, but as you can see, this is very important, very timely. May God bless you. I'll keep you posted about new proceedings about Stepping Stone Parents Community. Thank you very much. For those of you who say salam, salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, may God bless you. Please send your numbers onto my WhatsApp number, 0772 750 708. I'll also thank my administrator, Sumaya, for having enabled the meeting to be very successful. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. My fellow doctors, bye-bye. Thank you.